Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today is Tuesday, March the 21st, and today I went 5 miles on the treadmill, and that was alternating between running and walking, where I ran approximately 3.75 miles or so, and maybe even further. I didn't really keep an accurate count because I was mostly just trying to get in some distance. And I did that with what feels like a little bit of effort. And part of that effort was because I didn't feel as rested as I normally would feel. Now, if you're following me on this journey, yesterday you heard a message where I talked about several of my eBay auctions going unpaid. Non-paying bidders have been plaguing me, in addition to other interesting anomalies that used to not be an issue for me in the past. So on this channel, I talk a lot about certain things that seem like maybe supernatural in terms of spiritual attacks, things like that, prayer and fasting. I talk about things like that, and every so often I'll even recite the Lord's Prayer. So if topics like this are something you get incensed by, please feel free to unsubscribe already. But if topics like this seem basic and natural rather than unnatural, then listen along, because a lot of the wealth building or health building topics that we can all benefit from include things such as wishing well for one another. When we have joy, we generally will try to share the joy with other people. And for me, a lot of joy has come in the form of regaining my ability to cover ground, because I love to be out in nature. It's been raining a lot lately, and although the rain isn't going to melt me, since I'm trying to run, I want to try to perform those activities, fortunately inside the home, where I'm able to, courtesy of basically my former employer, who funded the treadmill that I've had for what seems like maybe a couple of decades now. And so I've only recently really started putting that thing to use, and I'd like to express gratitude for having that capability, along with the smartwatch that I have that's been allowing me a virtual trainer, so to speak. And more than that, it allows me to capture the data. And so for an example, today I went 5 miles, like I was saying, and those 5 miles, I clicked off the miles using my lap button for each of the miles that was registered on the treadmill. And so I was able to monitor my pace, which sometimes included, as I said, walking, as well as my running intervals. And the reason I started this video saying that I felt a little bit challenged, I didn't rest the same way that I normally do. In fact, yesterday, the non-paying bidder issue, which I told you, my audience, was a minuscule obstacle, as opposed to the sometimes circular conversations that I happen to be presented with, was in fact what happened yesterday. So yesterday I spent well over 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours, on a phone call where I feel like I was kind of duped into going into this conversation, where we cover a lot of these same topics that I'm covering on this channel right now. And when I say I feel duped, what I mean is the person who had this conversation with me went and tried to tell me how I caused my own father's anger towards me. And it was really an unusual conversation. You know, have you ever had one of those people where you talk with them and you might tell them your circumstance, and then they try to one-up you and say, well, you know, that's interesting, but, you know, here's what I'm going through. Some people will call it narcissistic, basically narcissism. and or narcissistic. And I just call it lack of empathy. And a lot of people do not have empathy, which is why when last August, when I saw an unusual gathering of yearling bears circling the campgrounds, most of the people, including the rangers that were on duty, could not even seem to recognize that the situation was unnatural and was something that should have been addressed quite fully with some kind of action, like closing down the campgrounds for the benefit of the bears that were looking for the few places in the campground that there were available with shade and water for the yearling bears, which were being driven out of their area because of drought-related circumstances. Anyways, there are a lot of topics that I try to weave together here, and typically you have to be able to think long-term and fully in order to experience the knowledge that's coming from these conversations. So this person I was talking with is a very brilliant person, just like my own father. And my own father is able to hear the things that I'm saying, but the moment that I touch on tying this together with this experience that we're having, maybe being a spiritual experience, that sometimes seems to agitate people such as my father. And I don't say that as a judgment so much as I say it as an observation. Very recently, in all segments of my family, I've had circumstances where I've initiated a conversation that I felt was unfinished. And that's how I basically got duped into the conversation yesterday that I was having, where someone was telling me that I caused my own father's anger at me, and that trying to solve this issue was like solving a Rubik's Cube, and how impossible that was. And just by coincidence, or what some people might call synchronicity, not 3 or 4 days before, I had actually learned to solve a Rubik's Cube, which is why maybe you saw that video on my channel where I'm solving a Rubik's Cube. Thankfully, I had a soundtrack that I was able to pair to that video, and so I was able to share that video at least 3 different ways with 3 different versions of songs that I thought were quite entertaining if you're looking to learn to solve this puzzle on your own. So just by coincidence or by synchronicity, I had in fact solved a Rubik's Cube, and I mentioned this same circumstance. I said, well, actually, I'm able to solve a Rubik's Cube, and this person said, I'll be able to mess that cube up so much that you won't be able to solve it. And the child in me took it as if, it's like, oh, you're like someone was saying, I'm going to be able to twist it so many times in so many different ways that you'll never be able to solve it. But as I look back on this in hindsight, it's possible this person was expressing violent tendencies, saying that they were going to destroy this cube so that it couldn't be solved. However, this was meant. It was meant as one of those things where, again, if you tell someone in sheer honesty your progress, your goals, your triumphs, your joys, your sorrows, sometimes these people will not listen along with you or even have any compassion towards what you're saying. Because much like the campground rangers who weren't able to recognize the bears as having any kind of feelings as they went around air horning the bears from one shady spot to another, even though you could see the ribs on these animals as they were moving, much like the uncompassionate rangers who were just doing a job and collecting a paycheck, basically, this person who was talking with me was also reaching out because they wanted something from me. And the moment that they heard that I wasn't able to assist them with this, they went so far as to say, well, if I knew that you couldn't help me with this, they didn't say they said I wouldn't have bothered calling you to begin with. And that was pretty interesting, because basically that just means that if I'm of no use to them, then there is no benefit to even having a conversation. So the friendships that I've had to question. Even the recent initiated contact on channels, even such as a channel like this one, or more accurately, my LinkedIn channel, have resulted in conversations that basically are one directional conversations, where somebody might glean some insight out of you, never really trying to share with you anything on their side, and then trying to guilt trip you into saying that you're not listening, you're not paying attention to their side of the story. And also trying to say things like, you're not allowing me to talk, something like that. The thing about the spirit of truth and error is that if you continue to tell people the full truth as a child would, like for an example, I just solved the Rubik's Cube. I just learned how to do it. There's no way you can unsolve it and scramble it to the point where I won't be able to solve it. Something like that can make the narcissistic egocentric mind angry at you, because they thought they were coming at you with some kind of ammunition to continue to tear you down and bring you down to their level. So for these type of situations, I've made videos that talk about these topics. In fact, one of the videos I made says, are you a witch, a warlock, or an energy vampire? And I've also touched on the aspect that it takes one to know one. We all have tendencies of egocentric behavior. We all have tendencies of narcissism. We all have tendencies of basically practicing pagan rituals. And we all have the ability to recognize right from wrong. What we don't all have is an example system that somehow puts into a context that we can understand whether or not we are learning and moving in a direction together. And so for those reasons, every so often I'm tasked with speaking with somebody for usually an extended period of time. And usually that intrudes on my personal time that I generally take to try and do anything I can to continue to make money. And it's not that I want to make money, it's that, in this society where some have convenience type features, vehicles, homes, and so forth, we have bills that are associated with that. And so the way that I try to make that money is by helping people by building the things that I can build, like guitars, knives. I even registered a site called sharpinstruments.us. And what I mostly do is try to reference any of the things that I do back to the creator, the reason that we're here. No matter what I'm building, no matter what music I'm putting out, I try to put it there with the aspect that I've got that joy down in my heart. And I try to express it. And I try to express it very carefully, because again, when you express things, even basic words of peace, like the Lord's Prayer, things like that, even if you were to analyze the Lord's Prayer line by line and recognize there's nothing in there that's central to one specific religion, even if you were to say those words line by line, if you were to do that in mixed company, some people might suddenly accuse you of all kinds of things, including being warlike. And that, to me, these things are almost they're almost trivial, with the exception that having these conversations regularly can be quite challenging, because the way that some people mean this is with an aspect of harm. And so health and wealth building can go two different ways. And when people fully try to vex you, and when you accept those conversations and respond in peace, you may feel the you may feel the vexing, you may feel the ill intent, because you associate. It's like if you hung out with sick people, you might pick up a little bit of the illness, and you might have to take a little bit of time to recover from it. But once you recover from it, you become more and more immune to those illnesses. And that is especially magnified when you put in the quality time to balance your physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being. And so for me, emotionally, I feel a lot better than I felt for the first 44 years of my life, or 45. Spiritually, I believe the same thing is true, and it's been true. I've often had doubts in the past that I was moving in the right direction, but the more that I am shielded from the witches, warlocks, and energy vampires, the more I know that I'm moving in the right direction. Physically, however, I had not really been putting in the time, and I also had been consuming quite a few things that could definitely cause illness, and that includes media. So a lot of people were in disbelief when I said there was almost like a period of 2 years where I didn't listen to any kind of music. And a lot of people are in disbelief when I say I haven't had a paid cable subscription for years, many years. And a lot of people are in disbelief when I say that I can go to a place like a national park and observe all of the natural things that are happening for hours on end, days on end, weeks on end. A lot of people are in disbelief that I can go without so many of the conveniences that some of us deem as necessary. And that's because I'm not addicted to those same things. However, just because we're not addicted to those things doesn't mean that we aren't errantly consuming maybe too much. Right now we're in the period of Lent, and during the period of Lent, we can stand or even sit and go without so many things, and possibly be all the healthier. And those are the type of conversations that I like to discuss with people who are true believers in peace. The true believer of peace will often be able to speak with me about these topics for hours, days, and in general, we oftentimes meet up in places like out in the middle of nature. Those are the things that bring me joy. So today I went 5 miles, which is not really that far, except for that I ran quite a bit of it. And I also went without several hours of sleep, not because I wasn't tired, but because there were things that were on my mind. And also I physically was experiencing some of the effects of having a conversation with somebody who, again, from my perspective, had a lot of venom that they wanted to interject into my scope, into my being. And so I had to basically just trust the process, and his will be done. And by that I mean, it's like the words of peace in the Lord's Prayer. You can think about it, say it, pretend it doesn't exist, or recognize, hey, maybe I should look it up. And especially during this period of Lent, think about the things that I'm doing and saying before I actually speak or do those actions. Think about the things that we're looking at before we choose to actively look at those things, and maybe even reevaluate how we're looking at things, how we're speaking about things, how we're speaking to one another, and what we're doing to protect our spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being. And physical well-being. These are the things that are the true aspect of how to build our wealth, and wealth and health go hand in hand. So if we find ourselves at a point where we are becoming unhealthy, it can become quite easy to lose any of that wealth that we once would have easily commanded with our capable, more than capable hands. You know, for those of us who are fully formed still at this point, and we're overlooking the things that we have the capability of doing, we need to recognize that there are people who are at a far greater disadvantage, who are doing far more than what some of us are doing. So all in all, what I'm talking about on this channel has not changed. I don't really need anyone to place random comments about, you know, it's great that you have this device, or it's great that you know, have this treadmill, or it's great that you were able to, you know, solve this cube, or it's great. It's basically, it's just a matter of understanding that we are in a spiritual battle, and sometimes we might benefit from stopping to observe the rest of the world as if it's not out to get us. There's this one guy here on YouTube. I'll mention the name. It's Mark the Messenger, and he's always drawing on a whiteboard about how we need to immediately remove crystals from our home, things like that, because they have to do with black magic. But the irony of it is that these are items created by the creator, and in a lot of cases, when we see things and look at them out of context because we're fearful of the way that these items might relate to us, then we're acting exactly based on a plan, a master plan of fear and emotional response. And just to put it into perspective, if we think that crystals are evil and that they need to be removed from the home and you know, shunned, then we might want to also reconsider ever giving somebody a ring with a diamond in it. We might want to reconsider wearing a watch that has, you know, a crystal bezel in it. We might want to reconsider every aspect of jewelry and clothing that we've ever had, because in almost every case, everything that was sold to us is provided by a commercial entity. The will and the energy that we all put into our work has a lot to do with what we're receiving and gifting to ourselves and to one another. But overall, the fact is that all of these materials were brought to us by nature itself. Nature itself is what we are supposed to be the steward of. And if we're not paying attention to and observing those things, we might be overlooking the one component that we are most responsible for. And that's basically why this channel centers around wellness and conservation. If we are unwell, we may not be able to help conserve anything. If we are unwell, we might talk with other people and try to cause them harm by blaming them for every problem that they're experiencing. However, if we are well, then we may be able to allow other people to see a perspective that we are able to share with them as an observation. And we might, as the person receiving this information, we might not get upset when somebody tells us, hey, maybe we need to slow down and talk this through. Maybe we need to stop the car, put it in park, and talk these things through. Maybe we're having this conversation because we're trying to educate ourselves in the midst of a starvation from information. This is a time frame when information is what most of us could truly benefit from, but we don't have a lot of knowledge that's being shared out there. We have a lot of fear and we have a lot of anger, but where's the anger management? Where are the anger management classes that are supposed to be held within our family circles, within our friendships, within our groups? Those are just my basic thoughts. I hope that you enjoy these topics. I hope that you are experiencing a pleasant Lent season. Here where I'm at, we're getting an abundance of wonderful rain, and it is nurturing the plants. We dodged the brunt of the cold front, And all I got to say is we're off to a good start where I'm at. I know that there aren't a whole lot of places that can, there are a lot of places that can't say the same thing. And for that reason, as I go to bed, especially knowing that it's not just people that are suffering from these anomalies, I think about these situations, hoping that I can help to absolve the circumstances, hoping that I can participate in a way where I can at least bring awareness to the fact that we do need to look at this nation and maybe on a global scale, look at this world and figure out how to do better. The first thing is maybe we can do without many of the things that we've been excessively consuming on a regular basis. Those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments area. Thank you for subscribing, or at least considering subscribing to this channel. Thank you for watching this entire clip. And I look forward to seeing your interactions. If you liked this video, please be sure to click on the thumbs up. If you didn't like it, please click on the thumbs down. Either way, I'd love to see your comments that have a little bit more to do with what we're actually talking about here. Otherwise, just go on about your day, take this knowledge as it is, sleep on it, think about it. Hopefully when you lay yourself down to sleep, you'll think about these topics and not the news clips that you've been watching, and hopefully you're not even watching the news clips all that much, because the truth of your stories and the news that you might want to be following is literally in your own backyard in many cases. So till next time, thanks again for watching. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff.